Salve, and welcome to section 6 of the prose literature, the first of the 3 sections by the Roman author Tacitus about Boudicca's rebellion. So, brief background on Tacitus. He's writing more than a century and a half later than Caesar, and he himself becomes a relatively important person in later life. Obviously, he has the time and money to spend time writing books, and he seems to have written quite a lot of them. He wrote the Agricola, which was a biography of his father-in-law who conquered Wales and North England, and, from our points of view, more importantly, the Annales and the Histories, which are this historical narrative that we're going to be working on in sections 6, 7, and 8. He himself seems to be quite pessimistic. It's suggested in large part that this is because he survived Emperor Domitian's purges of the nobility and became quite skeptical of tyrants and powerful leaders like that, although he did seem to have liked the Emperor Trajan and was well supported by him. So, sections 6, 7, and 8 are the famous Battle of Watling Street. Section 6 is Boudicca encouraging her troops before that battle begins. It really is quite an important battle, as on the opposing side is the governor and the largest remaining force of Romans on the island. If they had lost this battle, they would have probably had to withdraw from the island completely. Boudicca, wehens, carrying her filias, her daughter's praise, in front of herself, in her kuru, in her chariot. Ut here translated as whenever, could be as or when, but whenever she arcesserat had approached quamquam nationem. Each nationem looks like nation, really tribe here. The Boudicca is leading the Iceni, probably the largest component of her forces, as the biggest and most powerful tribe in the area, but she's also got other allied British tribes who have grievances with the Romans. As she approached each tribe, she testabatur, she was declaring quidem indeed. Now, as I say down here, the entirety of section 6 is an indirect speech because it's Boudicca's speech to her troops. So we're going to get a lot of accusative and infinitive, and a lot of that's in there because indeed that's how indirect statements work. So she was declaring that it was customary for Britannis, customary for Britons to bellare, to make war, under the ductu feminarum, under the leadership of women. This is Tacitus's words, remember, it's not necessarily the case in reality. But at that time, she was not, ut as autem, one having risen, perfect active participle, from tantis maioribus, from such great ancestors. Avenging is the word ulkiski, which comes from the end of chunk 2, but must apply here. She was not as one risen from such great ancestors, avenging her regnum and her opes. This is a slightly weird comment. She is denying that the reason for the battle is merely to retain her kingdom and wealth that the Romans have stolen from her. But, as we will see, she has lots of other different reasons for this battle. Now, if you were paying attention, you may have noticed that there were some weird errors in the previous slide. However, when you're dealing with a language, you're actually dealing with 4 different versions of any language. The language that is taught in a classroom. This is the perfect version, which follows all the nice grammatical rules, as opposed to the language that people actually speak in day-to-day and write in. It usually has slang and errors and colloquialisms, etc., etc. The language of formal prose text is often very fancy, very complex, and often has what the classroom would tell us is errors, but because a fancy academic is writing it, it instead gets called style. Finally, we have poetry, where the rules are made up and the points don't matter. Tacitus, as a fancy academic, is writing type 3. One of the most common quote-unquote errors that he makes is he misses out the verb essay in one form or another. So chunk 1 actually should have had essay after solitum and autem, because that would make those verbs into an infinitive, which is necessary for an accusative and infinitive indirect statement. He just won't do that. You get used to it. Sorry about that. So Boudicca continues. She's saying that she's not doing this to get back her money and freedom. Verum, but ut unum, as one, vulgo, from the common people. She's not a commoner. She's a queen. However, we move on. She was ulcisci, avenging. Her amisam, los libertatem, freedom. Her corpus, her body, third declension neuter, so confectum describes it, her body worn out by verberibus, by beatings, and her pudicitiam, her chastity contractatam, violated of her daughters. Supposedly the Romans flogged Boudicca and raped her daughters, which is, to be fair, a fairly decent reason to be quite cross. As you probably know, Emperor Claudius invades Britain in 43 AD, really just to gain some military glory, because he needed some. Prasutagus appears to have become a client king, that is to say, someone who accepted Roman rule and paid Roman taxes, but otherwise was still in charge of his own area and was able to get the resources from his people. He became client king of the Iceni over in the east of Britain. When it looked like he was shortly to die, he decided to attempt to preserve his tribe's independence by splitting up his will. He gave half his wealth to the emperor Nero and half to his wife Boudicca and their daughters. Tacitus reports that the Romans just did not do this, and they just decided that when Prasutagus died, they were going to take all of his money and wealth. They seized land and treasure from the queen and also just from the nobility, and they flogged his wife Boudicca and raped his daughters. We don't know, I don't believe, whether Nero himself ordered this. It is plausible Nero was somewhat of a crazy dude, but it's also entirely plausible that the Romans on the ground just decided that, no, some barbarian like Prasutagus doesn't get to decide. As you might imagine, Boudicca not happy about this. So, Boudicca continues with reasons that she is fighting against the Romans. That the cupidines, the desires, you may be thinking, where's the word that? Remember, this is all part of an indirect statement, so we need to, in good English, have a that. That the desires of the Romans had profectus, had advanced eo to that point, ut, such that they non-reliquent, they wouldn't leave corpora, bodies, ne quidem, not even senectam, old age, aut virginitatem, or virginity impollutam, unpolluted. That is probably a reference to her own travails, that they would beat the old and rape the virgins. She continues, that the deos, that the gods, tamen, nevertheless adesse, were here for their justae vindictae, for their just vengeance, just in the sense of justice, that it is meet and just that the gods take vengeance on the Romans for their terrible actions through Boudicca and her army, that the legionem quae ausasit, which had dared Proelium battle, Cecidisse had fallen. This is a reference to the 9th Legion, who have already been destroyed by Boudicca. That the Ceteros, that the rest were occultari were hiding in their castries, out circumspicere, or were looking around for their fugam. That they, the Romans, they nay perlaturos, that they wouldn't endure quidem, even the strepitum, even the din and clamorem and shouts of tot millium, of so many thousands, nedum, much less their impetus and their manus, their charges and their hands, literally hands in the sense of hands full of weapons, so you could say arms here. Boudicca probably has a point. The Romans were quite badly outnumbered, so there is a decent chance that they may well have fled from this battle. They didn't. But Boudicca did have reasons to imagine that it would go well. So far, the Romans had been taken almost completely by surprise. Suetonius, the Roman general, had actually been up in Anglesey trying to kill the remaining Druids. And as a result, Boudicca has free reign. She destroys the city of Camlodunum, the capital of Roman Britain at the time, defeats a large detachment of the 9th Legion, hence her comment in the previous chunk, and also burns down Londinium and Verulamium, two other large Roman cities. The Roman citizens there died very unpleasantly. Tacitus has a bit of a description about how nasty the things that the Britons were doing. There are really no good guys in this story. The Romans do terrible things to Boudicca, but Boudicca does terrible things back to the Romans. To continue, that, this is still an indirect statement, see if expenderant they considered, if they were to consider, secum, with each other, the copias forces armatorum of their armed men, if, see they considered the causas belli, the causes of the war, vincendum esse, they must conquer, vel cadendum esse, or be slaughtered. Notice the strong evocative choice of words there. Illa acie, in that battle line, id, that destinatum had been determined mulieri, for a woman. Let weary men weerant live, et servirant, and be slaves. Very obvious appeal to male pride here, despite the fact that Boudicca is obviously a woman leading the army. The majority of her troops would, of course, be men. So there you have it, the entirety of section 6. Boudicca's pre-battle speech is pretty good, lots and lots of different reasons and some clever bits of vocabulary and style. I mean, not really Boudicca's speech, this is actually Tacitus writing it half a century later in Latin, which obviously Boudicca would not have been giving a speech to her own British forces in. However, we're here to analyse the Tacitus, so that's fine. I would argue it's certainly not clear whether Tacitus thinks that Boudicca is in the right in her rebellion, or whether she's a barbarian who should have just shut up and taken it. Maybe a little bit of both. It's difficult to put modern morality onto ancient peoples, although the Romans do a great number of terrible things, and are probably in the wrong here considering that they did invade. But would Tacitus think so? Probably not. Anyway, hope that helps. Thank you very much.